He called himself a god and ruled like the devil. Caligula wasn't just Rome's mad emperor. He turned the empire's golden palace into a living nightmare. And the truth behind his reign is even darker than the legends. History has always been shaped by the ambitions of its leaders. Some, driven by vision, have built empires and inspired generations. Others, consumed by fear, vengeance, or delusion, have left behind only ruins and terror. Among these figures, few stand out as starkly as Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, a man better known to the world as Caligula. To the people of ancient Rome, the word Caligula would come to mean much more than a name. It would echo through the marble halls of the imperial palace, whispered by senators and slaves alike, as a byword for madness, cruelty, and unchecked power. Yet Caligula's story begins not in darkness, but in hope. Born in 12 AD, Caligula was the beloved son of Germanicus, a celebrated Roman general revered almost as a living hero. As a child, Gaius accompanied his father on military campaigns along the Rhine frontier. The soldiers, delighted by the sight of the little boy dressed in a miniature uniform, nicknamed him Caligula, meaning little boots. To them, he was a mascot, a symbol of the army's future and the dynasty's promise. But Rome was a city perpetually on the edge, its politics a bloody game of intrigue and betrayal. When Caligula was just 7, his father died under suspicious circumstances, possibly poisoned by political rivals. The family's fortunes turned. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, outspoken and defiant, was exiled and starved to death. Caligula's brothers were either murdered or driven to suicide. The young boy, who was once the darling of the legions, was now a survivor, raised in a world where trust was dangerous and affection could be fatal. Caligula's early years in Rome's palaces left scars that would never fully heal. He learned to mask his thoughts, to hide his true feelings, and to watch as others plotted and schemed. He was sent to live with the Emperor Tiberius, a man notorious for his paranoia and sadism. On the island of Capri, Tiberius's villa was rumored to be a place of excess and cruelty, where the emperor indulged his darkest whims. Here, Caligula learned that survival meant adaptation, and perhaps that cruelty was the surest path to power. When Tiberius died in 37 AD, Caligula was just 24 years old. The city erupted in joy at the news of the old emperor's death. The Senate and the people alike hailed Caligula as a savior. He was the grandson of Augustus, the heir of Germanicus, the golden boy who would restore Rome's greatness. In those first months, he lived up to the promise. He ended treason trials, recalled exiles, and granted bonuses to the guards. Rome celebrated, festivals filled the streets, and the new emperor was beloved. But the bright dawn of Caligula's reign would soon give way to gathering storm clouds. Just months into his rule, Caligula fell gravely ill. The details are lost to history. Some say he was poisoned, others that he suffered from a fever. For several weeks, he hovered near death. When he recovered, something in him had changed. The man who emerged from that sickbed was not the same one who had ascended the throne. At first, the signs were subtle. Caligula began to speak more openly about his divine nature, insisting that he was not simply emperor, but a living god. He constructed temples in his honor, demanded sacrifices, and appeared before the people dressed as Jupiter or Apollo. Statues of gods in Rome's temples had their heads replaced with his own likeness. His demand for worship was not just a political maneuver. It seemed to be a profound conviction. The Senate, that august body of Rome's elite, found themselves both humiliated and terrified. Caligula delighted in mocking them, forcing senators to run alongside his chariot, or making them grovel at his feet. He is said to have considered appointing his favorite horse, Incitatus, as consul, a gesture that was either a joke, a threat, or a shocking demonstration of contempt for the entire Roman political system. But Caligula's cruelty was not reserved for the powerful alone. He began a reign of terror, ordering the execution of former friends and allies on the slightest suspicion. Trials were little more than spectacles, with verdicts decided before they began. The emperor took pleasure in devising new forms of punishment, and public executions became entertainment. The line between justice and caprice vanished. Fear replaced law. As his reign progressed, Caligula's behavior grew ever more bizarre. He staged elaborate games and spectacles, bankrupting the treasury to pay for them. He demanded impossible acts of loyalty, forcing noblemen to run beside his litter for miles or to watch as their families were killed. He reveled in debauchery, seducing the wives and daughters of his allies and boasting about his conquests. To the people of Rome, rumors of the emperor's madness spread like wildfire. Some whispered that he spoke to the moon, or that he conversed with the gods. Others told of nights filled with screams from the palace, of secret passages and hidden torture chambers. Caligula's unpredictability became his greatest weapon. No one, not even his closest advisors, could guess what he might do next. Yet, for all his excesses, a question lingers. Was Caligula truly insane, or was his madness a calculated mask? Some historians argue that his most outrageous acts were deliberate provocations, ways to test the loyalty of those around him, or to shatter the old order of Roman politics. By humiliating the Senate, he ensured they could never unite against him. By cultivating an image of divine madness, he made himself untouchable. But if it was an act, it was one that consumed its own author. As the months passed, Caligula grew increasingly isolated. He trusted no one, fearing assassination at every turn. He demanded ever more extravagant displays of loyalty, yet rewarded them with suspicion and cruelty. His inner circle became a nest of spies and informants, each waiting for a misstep. The people, who had once cheered his name, now lived in fear. Taxes soared to pay for the emperor's extravagance. Food shortages gripped the city, while Caligula feasted in splendor. Where once there had been hope, now there was only dread. The end, when it came, was swift and bloody. In January of 41 AD, after less than 4 years on the throne, Caligula was assassinated by members of his own Praetorian Guard. The conspirators struck as he left the theater, stabbing him again and again. His wife and young daughter were murdered alongside him. The Senate, caught by surprise, briefly considered restoring the Republic. But the moment had passed. Caligula's uncle, Claudius, was hustled to safety and proclaimed the next emperor. The death of Caligula was greeted with relief, but also with unease. Rome had witnessed the dangers of absolute power in the hands of a single man. The empire would go on, but the scars of Caligula's reign would linger for generations. In the centuries since his death, the legend of Caligula has only grown. Ancient historians, writing in the decades after, painted him as a monster, mad, depraved, and inhuman. They told stories of orgies and atrocities, of incest and blasphemy, of a ruler so consumed by his own power that he lost all sense of reality. But history is rarely so simple. Some modern scholars argue that Caligula's reputation was exaggerated by his enemies, that the accounts of his madness were colored by political bias. In a world where emperors lived and died by rumor, it is hard to know where the truth ends and myth begins. What is certain is that Caligula's reign exposed the fragility at the heart of the Roman Empire. The system that Augustus had built, a delicate balance of old republican forms and new imperial authority, was always at risk of being upended by the character of the man at the top. Caligula's brief, chaotic tenure revealed how quickly power could become tyranny, and how easily the machinery of the state could be bent to serve a single will. His legacy is a warning that unchecked power, especially when wielded by the unstable or the unscrupulous, can turn even the most glorious civilization into a place of fear and nightmare. Yet there is something undeniably fascinating about Caligula. Perhaps it is the sheer scale of his excesses, or the mystery of his motives. Was he truly mad, or simply playing a part? Did he believe himself a god, or did he merely wish others to believe it? Was he a victim of his upbringing, marked by trauma and loss, or was he born with a taste for cruelty? No one can say for sure. The records are fragmentary, the witnesses long dead. All that remains are stories, some horrifying, some absurd, all larger than life. We are left with images. The young boy in his tiny boots, cheered by soldiers. The glittering emperor, adored by Rome in the first flush of hope. The tyrant, capricious and cruel, surrounded by enemies and haunted by paranoia. And finally, the corpse, lying in a pool of blood on the palace floor, his name already becoming legend. In the end, Caligula's story is not just the tale of a single man, but a reflection of Rome itself. The heights of ambition, the depths of depravity, the fragility of order. His life is a reminder that history is shaped by both greatness and madness, and that the line between the two is often perilously thin. For those who lived through his reign, Caligula was a nightmare from which they could not wake, a ruler who turned the palace into a prison and the city into a stage for his darkest fantasies. For those who came after, he became a symbol, a warning of what happens when power is unmoored from reason, and when the man at the top becomes a god in his own eyes. Yet even now, across the centuries, Caligula's story compels us. We search for answers in the fragments of history, trying to understand the man behind the myth. We wonder what drove him, madness, malice, or something more complex. And we recognize, perhaps uneasily, that the dangers he embodied are never entirely gone. History has seen its share of tyrants, but some rulers, like Caligula, cross the line so completely that they become something else entirely. A cautionary tale, a shadow on the memory of empire, a nightmare that refuses to fade. As Rome's marble ruins crumble, and the stories of its emperors grow distant, the legend of Caligula endures. He remains, even now, a symbol of the darkness that can lurk behind the mask of power, and a reminder that history, for all its glories, is never free from the specter of madness.
If you love uncovering the dark secrets of history, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and join us every week for more untold stories from the ancient world.